Hello, and welcome to On Good Faith, a program sponsored by the Cape Cod Council of Churches. I am Jonathan Onquist, the pastor of First Lutheran Church in West Barnstable, one of the Council's member church bodies, and it is and has been my pleasure to serve as your host for On Good Faith. We bring to you persons, events, activities that affect us, and we affect each other here on Cape Cod. And today we're going to be looking at the 2015 Housing with Love Walk for the Homeless. It's the 23rd annual event. Bob Murray, who died a couple of years ago, was the head of this with the Housing Assistance Corporation from Harwich, and he did a lot of work with it, and this is the 23rd annual event. Since 1993, this housing walk has raised $3.6 million to help fight homelessness on Cape Cod, provide housing. And the homeless, it is a real present issue. There is a book put together here in the Cape by Nancy Jane Woodside entitled Sea Glass, Women Speak from America's Newest Plantations, talking about homelessness. I'd like to read one poem in here by Star Bowers. This poem was read by Carolyn Corrigan in 2013. She was the first woman to speak at the annual Homeless Memorial Service at the Federated Church in Hyannis. Star Bowers writes this. It's entitled Borderline. I live in a place where everyone silently walks. No one wants to be heard. It's a hideout, I think. If seen in the hallway by another, we scatter in or out. No words, eyes downcast. No one here has any money. A deal here, government check there, part-time job at minimum. We try to get free food legally. Sometimes you hear laughter, music. Usually when one is evicted, a bottle of wine, some smoke, a mattress tied on top of a borrowed car, adventure in the rain, for the mattress at least. A roar from the building, hurrah! Someone is getting a first mattress, and someone, new or old, is homeless once again. Ooh. Someone is homeless once again. That is too real an event. Our guests today are Don Jenkins, a volunteer, very active volunteer for the work in fighting for the homeless, and Robin Wilkins, who is the new president of Harwich Ecumenical
Council for Housing.
For Housing, yes, HECH, okay. And Linda Bradstreet, who is the celebrity walker this year for the Cape Cod Council of Churches, and she also works as the leader at the Bridge to Hope program. I'm going to open to you, Don, Robin, and Linda. We've got a real issue here. We've got a lot of things we can do, and each of us can be part of answering the need. Can you speak to that need? Don?
So I could just say a couple things. It's surprising the number of people here on Cape Cod that are living at or below the poverty line. In fact, there are 5,600 children on Cape Cod that are living below the poverty line today. And that number is significantly higher, as much as 4 times what the number was 10 years ago. Of the people living in poverty in Barnstable County, 40% of them are single moms with children. And most of these people are working. Generally, they've got a job or 2 jobs. In the winter, maybe 3 jobs, because in the summer, maybe 3 jobs because they don't have one in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And it's just a struggle for them. The average wage on the Cape is $10.50 an hour. You really need to make $24 or $25 an hour to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Right, so people are living very much on the line. And if they miss a paycheck because their children are sick and they can't go to work, even if their employer is nice enough to save the shifts for them, what do they do at the end of the month? They've missed too many shifts and now they can't make their payment. So organizations like HECH can find the money to help them make the car payment, help them make 1 month's payment, keep them in their home. And then I'll give the floor, but last thing I'll say, An average intervention costs about $1,500 to get somebody's car back on the road so they can get to their job or get them through that month. Pay their oil bill. I mean, a number of people who fall behind in their fuel and are in jeopardy. The result of keeping them in their house saves the state $25,000 plus, because once a family's homeless, they're homeless for 6 months to a year or more, and that's a $25,000 to $50,000 bill. Not to mention the disruption for the children and the family.
Yeah.
So it's a very good deal to focus on keeping people in their homes. It's good financially, it's good for the family, and that's really the focus of the organizations that are walking in July.
Do many people on Cape Cod who are not homeless themselves realize that number? The significant.
I think it's a hidden thing. You know, the chances are the people that are taking care of your elderly parent or doing your landscaping or waiting on you in a restaurant or driving the school bus, they're probably working 2 jobs and barely making ends meet, and they're 1 car payment away from not being able to pay their rent. It's amazing the number of people, and it's invisible because they have a place to live for now, but they need some support and some help to keep it that way. And I think it's an invisible problem. Everybody thinks the Cape is great and everybody's got these beautiful houses and everything, but we tend to look past people that are really struggling and working hard and deserve our help.
Good point. Robin, with your work, what are you, how are you seeing the effectiveness or the lack of effectiveness of working for this problem of homelessness on the Cape?
We're in a crisis. The commission, Cape Cod Commission now is going through, because they need to rewrite the regional policy plan every year. And one of the priorities, and to build on what Don said, I'll just say that this all has to do with developing a smarter Cape Cod. So it's tied in. We've got a lot of things that are becoming integrated now. You've got the whole issue of housing and where people, when it comes to building new houses, where it should be built. But remember, we now have a 208 plan having to do with wastewater management. So there's an integration as to how we plan for the future of Cape Cod and how we're going to deal with our 4 watersheds and that issue. So there's an integration, and back to the Housing with Love walk, I think it would be important initially to hear what a celebrity walker has to say about being a celebrity and why were you selected.
Yes, and that celebrity is Linda, and your work with Bridge to Hope. Talk
Right.
about that too, and then as a celebrity walker, that's pretty impressive.
Oh dear. Well, first of all, I was designated the celebrity walker from my coworkers, and at the Council of Churches, the Housing with Love walk is their main fundraiser for the homeless. For
all the work the Council of Churches does
That's
for
correct.
fighting homelessness.
Right, all the ministries that
All
are
the
involved.
ministries are covered are affected by this housing walk for the homeless.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. And I like to think of the council as working one-on-one with the individuals, with the phone calls, with the outreach, the street reach. I mean, my particular program helps women coming out of jail to provide housing. And it would be very difficult for them to find housing if we didn't have this program. And we have mentors that work with them, and they can stay there for 6 months. So we're all like, what Diane Casey Lee always says, that we're a garment woven together, all the different ministries. But we not only weave together within the council, we weave together within the community with all the partnerships that we have with the agencies that we have, the churches that partner together.
And that is what I think is so important. Some of the programs we've had here on Good Faith have brought that to light.
Right.
There are so many different agencies. We've got to get the agencies together and know what we're doing, because we're doing the same thing in some places that we should be doing together and do double the good work. We've got to be aware of other people's efforts.
It's actually the walk over the years has brought together these agencies pretty effectively, because they've collaborated on the walk, and they do a lot of collaboration now and reach out. They know each other better, and they know what their unique skills are. Like the Homeless Prevention Council has caseworkers, which is kind of a unique approach. But they're touching Harwich Ecumenical Council or Housing Assistance Corp and community development and using all the different skills of the organizations to focus on a family.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of unique on the Cape. I'm not sure that that's true elsewhere in the state, that there's that much teamwork going on.
You're
And
reaching more
that's
people.
a real good point. The teamwork is, I think, something we can be proud of, but
Yeah.
I think we also have to be a little bit disappointed in ourselves when you say some of these figures of, like you mentioned, the number of children that are hungry, up from 2006, and what is it now?
It's over 4 times what it was. It's 5,600 now, children living below the poverty line.
And then when they go home from school on the weekend, they don't have food.
Yeah, one of the things that's touched me and that all the folks I've talked to, oftentimes when there's a snow day, it means it's a hungry day for school kids because the only hearty meal they get
Is at
is the
school.
breakfast or the lunch they have at school. And you were saying also, Linda, that sometimes the teachers will send little things home in their backpacks to get them through the.
Well, it really is churches that are interested, or could be other community organizations that are interested in meeting that need for children. You speak to someone at the school and you partner with the school to do so many bags of food that get placed inside a child's backpack on the weekend, more if it's a long weekend, and it helps those children who don't have those meals.
Yeah,
And this is
that's
at the
wonderful.
discretion of the teacher, so the teacher knows
They
where the
know,
need is.
right.
Yeah.
We just, at our church, we just drop off plastic bags filled with individual packs of food. And we drop them off at 2 different schools in Dennis, and they, the teachers know.
Distribute it.
We
Yeah.
also run a children's center through Hetch, and that became part of our mission. And back when Bob was involved in this, and we were going to build 2 new complexes. One of the commitments we made that at one of those complexes there would be a children's center, and the children's center would be for preschool people, because if you were a single mom and you needed a place for your child to go, and we could get a voucher for that child to be in the children's center, then the mom wouldn't be worrying about the child while she was off working.
Yeah.
So
That's a little thing, but it's what an important part of the complex
Yeah,
puzzle.
what does a single mom do if her child's just,
Yeah.
if she can't afford daycare, it eats up everything that she earns, where does she go? And
Yeah.
we've seen story after story like that, when it gets worse when the child is sick.
Yeah.
There's a woman that works in a restaurant in Hyannis, and they've been wonderful. They've held her job for her, but her child is in Boston, and she's in Boston a lot at Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
She can't work when she's in Boston, so what does she do? And those families need our help.
I just want to make a little clarification. We've said Hetch several times. I want to
Yeah.
be sure people know what Hetch is. H-E-C-H. Harwich Ecumenical Council for Housing.
Now
That's-
I'll clarify that, Jonathan.
Okay.
One of the indicators as to why we moved from the word homeless to housing is because the whole idea is you want to get them in a house so they won't be homeless.
Right.
And there's nothing more painful than go down to the beach at night sometime and see a car full with a woman's whole beds and every other thing. And what makes it even more painful is when there's a child in the car as
Yep.
well.
You see a lot of people camping with their kids in the
Not
state
for
parks.
pleasure, because that's where
Not
they
on
have to live.
vacation. And more people can afford a winter rental, but they can't be there in the summer. It's not on the landlord's fault. I mean, the landlord will only rent them for the winter because they know they can rent for the summer. But where do they go? Especially in the summer when all the prices are higher. So they're in their car at the beach, or they're in a
Right.
tent in Nickerson State Park.
Nickerson,
Yeah.
Surprisingly high number of people doing that, and lots of children.
Yeah. Bob Murray, under whose name this walk is been carried out, he was quite an instrumental figure in the beginning of this effort and in the continuation of this effort. Can you talk a little bit about his kind of legacy with this effort?
Yeah, Bob started on the Cape. He started four different affordable housing complexes: Falmouth Housing Corp., Harwich Ecumenical Council.
Harwich.
He also started the local pantry in Harwich and the food pantry in Falmouth.
Right.
He was a one-man gang. He was would never take no for an answer, I can tell you that for sure.
And I'll add
And he
one more
started-
thing that he
yeah.
added,
But-
because he brought this from Arlington. He was from Arlington, Massachusetts, and he was a pharmacist and came from that background, and then got involved with this, and it really was his mission. But what was amazing is, because we're here with a council of churches, he was a strong advocate for developing a youth ministry in Harwich. And it no longer exists. We now have just an extension of that with the schools, where there's a social worker that works in the school. But he believed passionately in the whole role that a youth ministry could play in a community.
And for the future of the community, yeah.
Right?
I was aware of that effort that he started there in Harwich. He had
Yeah.
that really a going effort there. And it's quite a loss, but quite a memory we have of him with this,
Yes.
the housing
And
with
he
Love
just
walk.
for the record, he actually walked. He started doing this walk,
Yeah.
and he walked the whole way, 106 miles.
The walk is
And
from
From
Provincetown,
Provincetown to
Falmouth.
Falmouth. Right. Not too many people walk the whole walk.
Yeah.
Generally, all the different agencies will walk within the area that they cover, like Harwich, Hatches and Harwich. Bob walked the whole thing every year. In fact, the last year he did it in a wheelchair. He was
Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard Waystack pushed him in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
His sneakers have now been returned to Falmouth. So they were carried by a whole host of people last year, but now they will be returned to Falmouth.
That can be a significant moment.
I'd like to
Linda?
think that maybe the Council of Churches could honor him in a way with recreating that youth group
Yeah.
that would be walking. I know we have the street outreach that the teenagers get involved in. They do 4 times a year, I think they have a breakfast for the homeless, and they do cookouts, and they actually get a lot of people involved, so.
That's what we're trying to do this
think we need to
year,
talk to
is to
Marilyn.
get as our celebrities some kids from the high school.
These kids
To
are from high
bring
school.
the awareness down to that level. And that's why when we bought the little ones, all from the preschool last year,
That was last year's.
they were all, that we made them all celebrities.
Yeah.
Right.
It was
That
a great
great.
moment.
right.
But you were the celebrity this year. There's others, I guess. Do you
Yeah.
know who the other celebrities are this year?
Well, a lot of us are still in the process of picking
Of
them.
picking celebrities.
See, so-
Now, we got to be sure we remember what the date is. The walk is on July 13th through July 19th.
Right. It starts on Monday the 13th
Monday
in
the
Provincetown, 8 in the morning.
8 in
And
the
then
morning.
what happens is the walk will go from Provincetown into just about to Marconi Beach that day,
Yeah.
and then it'll pick up on Tuesday and go into Orleans, and then on Wednesday it'll start in Chatham and end up in Harwich, and then Thursdays actually comes through Yarmouth and Hyannis and ends up in each day. And each of those days is sponsored by the agencies that's most appropriate based on where they're located.
Location is, yeah,
And generally, that's when their celebrity walkers would walk
in that section.
in that
Right,
on that
yes.
day, right?
But now, you plan on walking the whole thing?
No, I was just going to say, how many miles is it in the Hyannis part? I might be able to make that piece.
Well, a couple of years, I did it, this is several years ago, and I just walked, I walked as far as West Barnstable, my church.
Yeah.
That was where I went, and then I didn't go all the way to Falmouth. But it's a really wonderful opportunity, and it is a wonderful mission to try to give some money and some support to fight homelessness and the housing effort. It's so necessary, and it's a good physical exercise to
It
have a
is,
good
yeah.
walk. And I
What
think
makes
that's-
it unique is how many events cover all of Cape Cod.
Yeah.
Right.
How can you, the clarion call should be, when they're coming through my community,
I'm going to be there.
I'm going to be there.
Yeah, with the yellow shirts.
With a yellow
Yeah.
shirt. And it lists all the sponsors on the back,
good.
but it's got to be a yellow shirt.
Right. Yeah.
That was the-
Where'd the yellow come from?
That was Bob Murray's choice, and but we've never changed it. Bob
And
wanted-
you're appropriate here with the yellow
Yeah,
shirt.
see, I knew
Well
that.
done.
I
Should
knew
have worn
that.
my yellow shirt. Right?
Did
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Are you going to be walking this? You are.
I think I'm going to walk part of it.
Yeah.
And when I've walked before, and I've never walked the whole distance, I don't want to mislead anybody, but you see life from a different perspective when you're walking And when the cars go by and when people notice what you're doing,
What you're doing.
you see it differently.
Right.
And it's a
they
witness that
see it
really is a
differently.
positive witness when we're doing something for a real need and bringing that need to light. Because when you said some of the figures about the poverty and the hunger on the Cape for kids, I don't think many people even
Yeah.
think anywhere near that.
Right.
This one always touches me, so I want to mention it. On Thursday, the walk will go past, actually go past Hopeless that day.
Okay, Main Street.
But also Champ Homes. And children, when they come out of foster care, especially in some cases have special needs, they age out of foster care, where do they go? And there's one young woman at Champ Homes now who, she saved her money, she was aged out of foster care, she saved her money, she had a job, she made first and last month's payment, and she showed up at the apartment. It was occupied. She'd been scammed out of this. Now she has no money, nowhere to go, 19 years old, and she's living in a shelters, and the Champ Homes folks brought her in. Now she's going to Cape Cod Community, she's working, she's happy. You just can't say enough about.
And we have to highlight those good stories too,
Right.
because all we hear are the terrible stories. And there are good
Right.
stories, like
There's
that
a
was
lot
a
of
bad
good
story that
stories.
became good.
Yes.
And we have to highlight that. And you were talking even before the show began about the autism and housing.
Yeah,
That's a
and,
very significant issue too.
Yeah, a very significant issue. I'm on a board in Orleans called for Cape Cod Village, and there is another program in Dennis called Forward. So you have two projects that are going on in Cape Cod right now that are focusing on building housing for adults with autism, because what's happening is as an educator, I was in the beginning, I was in a school that had the first autistic children program when I was in New York. That's how many, hundreds of years ago. Now we have an adult population, and that they're now in their early 20s, and their parents are aging, and they are all the parents that I've talked to with adults with autism, they want those adults to have a home just like they have a home. So it's a significant mission.
And when they become out of the age to be covered by some of those resources, then that's when they need something.
Medicaid comes in, and there is legislation right now in all over the country that's being written to develop what they call a person-centered model for an adult with autism. And what it means is the autism spectrum is long. Everybody's at a different level. So you can't just say, well, I've met an autistic adult with autism. No, you haven't. You've just met one.
Yeah.
That's all you've met is one. So
It's much more expansive than
Yes,
we want to
yes.
believe.
Right.
I think you said before, what was the number of people needing housing?
500,000 will need
500,000.
housing. I mean, we have a person on our board for New Jersey. I mean, it's huge,
Yeah.
that particular issue. But we kind of went over the winter here. We just went through one of the historic winters on Cape Cod. Well, you know what else happened during this past winter? Gee, our utilities all went up.
Absolutely.
Oh, they doubled. Now, you've got a person who's carrying 3 jobs. Now their utility bill is doubled. They can't pay. Now they can't pay their rent. They can't pay their utility bill. I mean, it's crazy.
You have to also understand that a lot of these folks are in houses that were built as cottages, and so they're really spending a lot more on heat than you would expect.
Oh,
So one other thing to bear in mind when you think about working families, a lot of people make enough money so that they can't qualify for subsidized housing, but not enough to really live.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were living in the Craigville Motel when that got shut down, and I
Yeah.
don't know if the folks on remember that, but there were 20 or 30 children.
Yep.
And this is a success story. They all had 10 days to find someplace to go. They were paying $800,000, $900,000 a month for one room with, in terrible conditions. But Housing Assistance Corp in Hyannis was able to actually come up with some emergency vouchers, I think that might have been federally funded, and got those families into housing. So none of them ended up on the
We
street
rescued
because they were
one-
there.
We rescued one of those families.
A great
Yeah.
story,
That's
and those are the
right.
things we have to
Yeah.
highlight, because
Right.
good things do
That's what,
happen.
that's what
And there
this
are
funding
success
does.
stories, and
Right.
all of us working together
Right.
can make those
Yep.
success stories real. I want to thank you, Don and Robin and Linda, for being with me around this table and sharing what you have shared about our efforts to battle and for housing on Cape Cod. And I want to read, as I conclude, thanking you, but also read one more piece from, this is the beginning of a piece written by Ann Gomes about a day in the life of the homeless. It is a difficult situation we all deal with sooner or later in one fashion or another. Some of us will look away when we meet them on the street. Others will volunteer in shelters, and still others will become them. One of the difficulties for me when it comes to the homeless is one of attitude. She goes on quite extensively talking about attitude. Crazy things happen. How do we effectively deal with what happens? Our attitude. What is our attitude about the needs we see around us? Attitude is so important, and that is something we can always change. Thank you for being with us today on Good Faith. I look forward to seeing you again here on Good Faith. Peace to you.